And let's bring in our Eyes News chief correspondent, John Cookson, as he joins us live from Tel Aviv. John, thank you very much for joining us at this hour. What are the conditions like for Palestinians who have moved in their thousands to the south of Gaza?
Hi, Aaron. Look, as you saw from my report, it's almost beyond description the kind of conditions that Palestinians are living in there. I mean, the south of the Gaza Strip was already packed on normal times, and to have tens, possibly hundreds of thousands more Palestinians moving south, I mean, it just beggars belief how they're getting by. And I featured that little girl. She looked to be 3 or 4 years old. Lost 14 members of her own family, including her mother and father. It's just incredible. And then that tearful girl who was 6 or 7 years old saying, she can see no future. I mean, how has things come to this, that children as young as they see no future? 250 children killed so far in airstrikes by the Israelis since October the 7th. And ironically, just over the border, not very far from where those pictures were shot in Khan Yunis, is the Rafah crossing into Egypt. And on the other side of that crossing are hundreds and hundreds of trucks filled with food, medical supplies, other provisions, fuel, sent to the Palestinians by Jordan, Egypt, Turkey, and the UAE. But they've arrived at the El Arish air base. But the Israelis are not letting these supplies through until they say all the hostages released. And we learned today that 126 Israeli hostages are being held, foreigners also being held, 10 of those are British. So that's the situation on the border down there. All these supplies, including, I have to say, coffins, ready to go across the border into the beleaguered Palestinian communities in the south, but the Israelis just not letting them through at the moment. At some point, that's got to change. I think when the ground offensive begins, that border will open up, but it's a very narrow border. The Al Rafah crossing is only wide enough for one truck to go one way and another truck to come the other. So how are they going to funnel all those hundreds of thousands of people through there into Egypt? Again, impractical. We don't know how it's going to be done. For sure, Palestinians will suffer even more from that. So a horrible situation for the Palestinians, both in the south and indeed in the north. Those who have chosen to stay, doctors, hospitals are still functioning in the north. Doctors saying that they won't unplug life support machines for patients because they'll die, which of course is understandable. And yet the Israelis are telling people to get out because this ground invasion, as I alluded to in my report, is got to be soon.
Indeed, John, quite a stalemate nonetheless due to that scenario. Now, the Israelis claim to have assassinated another Hamas commander responsible for the October 7th attack. What more can you tell us there?
Yes, he's been named as Bilal al-Qedra, a senior figure, member of the Nukba Brigade, so-called elite force for Hamas. He was killed in a rocket attack or drone attack by the Israelis in Khan Yunis, which was where the Palestinians are sheltering. So that area is still coming under attack. And that follows the assassination news yesterday of Ali Qadi, another commander, senior commander in the Nukba Brigade, which carried out the worst of the atrocities on October the 7th, murdering more than 1,000 Israelis, butchering their bodies, defiling their bodies, and committing other acts which are beyond description. And there's a third assassination by the Israelis, Murad Abu Murad, a couple of days ago. So the Israelis having huge success taking out some of the senior commanders in Hamas. Now, to me, that's baffling how they did it. This is, of course, from information that the three securities forces have discovered. the same security forces who couldn't have predicted what happened on October the 7th, and yet they seem to have amazing contacts now, presumably from informants, to tell Israeli commanders where the likes of Bilal al-Qadra is holed up. I mean, these guys, these Hamas commanders, are shadowy figures at the best of times. We don't even have photographs to show. They travel around in the boots of cars under darkness. They don't use mobile phones in case they're detected. So how the Israelis have pinpointed these guys, not only pinpointed them, but used a drone strike to take them out. Quite incredible.
All right, quite incredible, you say. But what's happening to Palestinians in the West Bank who have been protesting?
Yes, the West Bank, the other Palestinian enclave seized by the Israelis back in 1967, is about 45 kilometers from Gaza, 45 or so. That's been under lockdown for the last 7 or 8 days, ever since the Hamas attack. And things there are pretty grim for the Palestinians who've been dying almost every day for months now, either shot by Israeli soldiers or Israeli settlers. More than 60 were arrested last night. We don't know why. 55 have been killed by Israeli forces or Israeli settlers since October the 7th. And all they were guilty of was protesting on the streets about what's going on in Gaza. And no doubt when the Israeli army does invade Gaza, they'll take to the streets again. And sadly, more will die. And some 11 were shot dead the other day. I mean, to what end? It's not going to change anything. And this is a sadness of what's going on in the West Bank.
Indeed, John. And how significant is it that the US is moving another aircraft carrier to the Mediterranean?
Yes, we heard that the USS Eisenhower has been dispatched from Norfolk, Virginia. We have some pictures of that to show you, to the Mediterranean to join the US Gerald R. Ford, which is already off Israel. It's significant in the sense that it's showing support, reaffirming support for Israel. But, you know, the US has so many military assets in the region. It has the biggest Air Force base outside of America in Qatar, the biggest naval base outside America in Bahrain. And by fast jet, they're only sort of less than an hour away from here. So I think it's perhaps more symbolic that the USS Eisenhower is being sent, but it also may be that the Americans believe that the conflict may widen, in which case more American assets will be needed in the region in due course. And by expanding, I'm talking about Hezbollah suddenly becoming involved. There's been, across the last few days, severe exchange of rocket fire between Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon and the Israeli Defense Force, and that's continued today. And the fear is that when the Israelis invade Gaza with a ground force, then Hezbollah could join the fight and open up a second front. So fears about an expansion of this conflict to the wider Middle East. That's possibly why the Americans are sending a new carrier. And it will take about 2 weeks to get here. So that perhaps also an indication of how long the Americans think that this conflict is going to run for.
All right, I want to say many thanks to you, John Cookson, for your time here on Newsday.